The hunt begins. In the cold depths of space, the Zorgax cruiser Krentok glided silently through the void. Aboard the ship, a dozen heavily armored beings gathered, checking their weapons with ruthless efficiency. The Zorgax were the apex predators of the galaxy, their entire culture revolving around the thrill of the hunt. And their favorite prey was humans. A proximity alert sounded, signaling that a human colony ship had been detected. The Zorgax leader, Kraxgor, bared his fangs in a twisted grin. "Prepare to board the human vessel," he growled. "Leave none alive." The human ship, the USC Hope's Dawn, was a modest transport carrying 1,000 colonists to a new world. They were families, dreamers seeking a fresh start among the stars. Captain Lena Barrows had no idea that their journey was about to become a living nightmare. The first blast rocked the Hope's Dawn, sending shockwaves through its hull. Red alert klaxons blared as the crew scrambled to assess the damage. Captain Barrows gripped the arms of her chair, eyes wide with disbelief, as she saw the massive alien ship looming on the view screen. "We're being boarded," cried the tactical officer, moments before a searing energy beam tore through the bridge. The Zorgax poured into the ship, their weapons spitting plasma as they mercilessly cut down the human crew. Amid the chaos, one survivor fought her way to an escape pod. Sergeant Zora Kerrigan, a security officer aboard the Hope's Dawn, had seen the Zorgax tear through her fellow crewmates. She knew that to stay was certain death. With a pang of guilt, she sealed herself inside the pod and ejected from the dying ship. As her escape pod hurtled away, Zora watched helplessly as the Zorgax ship fired a final devastating salvo at the Hope's Dawn. The colony ship exploded in a brilliant flash, the lives of all those aboard snuffed out in an instant. Tears streamed down Zora's face as she realized the enormity of what had happened. She was the lone survivor, adrift in an uncaring universe. Her pod's computer flashed a warning. It was being pulled into the gravitational well of a nearby planet. Zora braced for impact as the pod plummeted through the atmosphere, its heat shields glowing red-hot. With a bone-jarring thud, the pod slammed into the ground, skidding through the undergrowth of a dense alien jungle before finally coming to rest. Zora kicked open the pod's hatch, stumbling out into the humid air of the jungle. Her body ached, but miraculously, she was alive. However, as she looked up at the sky and saw the distant shape of the Zorgax cruiser orbiting the planet, she realized that her ordeal was far from over. The hunt had only just begun. Survival instincts. Sergeant Zora Kerrigan pushed through the dense undergrowth of the alien jungle, the humid air clinging to her skin. She had no idea what planet she was on, only that it was swarming with dangers. Strange animal cries echoed through the trees, and every rustling leaf made her reach instinctively for her sidearm. But the jungle's perils paled in comparison to the threat orbiting above. The Zorgax cruiser was still there, a malevolent presence watching from the sky. Zora knew that the predators would not be satisfied until they had claimed their prize. She needed shelter, a place to hide and gather her wits. As she scouted the area, Zora's trained eyes spotted signs of past civilization. Crumbling structures overtaken by vines, rusted metal glinting beneath the foliage. It appeared that she wasn't the first human to set foot on this world. A faint energy signal drew her deeper into the ruins. Zora approached cautiously, her weapon at the ready. She discovered a hidden bunker door, still sealed after all this time. With a bit of rewiring, she managed to coax the door open, revealing a darkened passage leading underground. The bunker was a treasure trove of abandoned human technology. Zora found a still functional power core, illuminating the space with an eerie glow. She rummaged through crates of supplies, finding ration packs, medical kits, and most crucially, an armory. As she inspected the cache of weapons, Zora's mind raced with possibilities. The Zorgax believed her to be defenseless prey, but with these resources at her disposal, she could turn the tables on the hunters. Days turned into weeks as Zora fortified her position within the bunker. She rigged the surrounding jungle with traps and early warning systems, determined not to be caught off guard. In quiet moments, she studied the star charts and logs left behind by the bunker's previous occupants, trying to piece together their fate. It seemed that this was not the first time the Zorgax had hunted humans on this planet. The record spoke of a colony, established decades ago, that had been devastated by the predators. The bunker had been a last refuge for the survivors, but their ultimate fate remained a mystery. Zara's solitude was shattered one morning by the blaring of perimeter alarms. The Zorgax had finally found her. She watched on security feeds as a hunting party emerged from their shuttlecraft, their distinctive armor glinting in the sun. She smiled grimly, checking the charge on her rifle. The hunters believed they were stalking easy prey. Little did they know that they had just walked into the sights of no ordinary human, but a trained soldier with a score to settle. Zara slipped out of the bunker, melting into the jungle like a wraith. She would show the Zorgax what it meant to hunt a human who was ready to fight back. The once defenseless survivor had transformed into a formidable predator in her own right, and she was ready to turn the tables on those who had slaughtered her crewmates. Turning the tables. The Zorgax hunting party moved through the jungle with predatory grace, their advanced weaponry at the ready. They had been bred for this, to stalk and kill the most dangerous prey in the galaxy. The human survivor they were tracking was just another trophy to be claimed. But Zara was no ordinary quarry. Hidden amongst the foliage, she watched the hunters approach, her finger resting lightly on the trigger of her rifle. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, rigging the area with a deadly array of traps and defenses. As the Zorgax entered a clearing, Zara made her move. She triggered a series of proximity mines, the explosions ripping through the hunters' ranks. The Zorgax scattered, seeking cover, but Zara was already on the move. She vaulted from her hiding spot, her rifle spitting plasma bolts with deadly accuracy. 2 hunters fell, their armor smoking from the precise shots. The others returned fire, their weapons stitching lines of destruction through the jungle. Zara ducked and weaved, using the terrain to her advantage. She lured the Zorgax towards her next trap, a pit filled with sharpened stakes. One hunter, too focused on his prey, stumbled into the pit, his scream cut short as he was impaled. The remaining Zorgax were more cautious now, realizing that their prey was not as defenseless as they had believed. They fanned out, attempting to flank Zora's position, but she had anticipated this. She remote detonated a series of charges, felling trees and blocking the hunters' paths. In the confusion, Zara slipped away, circling around to attack from a new angle. She picked off another Zorgax with a well-placed shot, the hunter's lifeless body toppling from a tree branch. The final Zorgax, a grizzled veteran covered in scars, charged at Zara with a roar of fury. She met his charge with a hail of plasma bolts, but the warrior's armor deflected the shots. He closed the distance, his wrist blades extending with a metallic shriek. Zara rolled to the side, barely avoiding a slash that would have disemboweled her. She came up firing, her shots focused on the weak points in the Zorgax's armor. The hunter staggered as a bolt penetrated his shoulder joint, his arm going limp. Seizing the advantage, Zara pressed her attack, driving the Zorgax back with a flurry of strikes. The hunter parried desperately, his remaining wrist blade a blur of motion. But Zara was relentless. With a final, desperate lunge, the Zorgax overextended himself. Zara sidestepped the attack and brought the butt of her rifle down on the hunter's head with a sickening crunch. The Zorgax crumpled, his skull caved in by the force of the blow. Zara stood over the fallen hunter, her chest heaving with exertion. She had done it. She had bested the Zorgax at their own game, turning their hunt back on them. But even as she savored her victory, Zara knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorgax cruiser still loomed in orbit, and its crew would not take the loss of their hunting party lightly. They would come for her again, with greater numbers and firepower. Zara needed to be ready. She set about scavenging equipment from the fallen hunters, taking their advanced weapons and armor for her own use. In the bunker's workshop, she began to modify and enhance her gear, determined to level the playing field against her alien foes. Zara had sent a message to the Zorgax, one written in the blood of their own kind. She was no longer just a survivor, but a warrior ready to take the fight to the hunters. And she would not rest until she had ended their reign of terror over humanity once and for all. Uncovering secrets. With the immediate threat of the Zorgax hunting party neutralized, Zara turned her attention to unraveling the mysteries of the abandoned human outpost. She delved deep into the bunker's data archives, sifting through fragmented reports and personal logs. It became clear that this planet had been the site of a secret research station, established to study the Zorgax and develop countermeasures against their predatory technology. The colony had been a cover, a way to hide the true purpose of the outpost from prying eyes. Zara discovered that the researchers had made startling breakthroughs, reverse engineering Zorgax weapons, and even developing prototype defenses against their ships. But before they could complete their work, the Zorgax had discovered the outpost and launched a devastating attack. The logs painted a grim picture of the colony's final days, with desperate battles fought in the very corridors of the bunker. In the end, the survivors had been forced to seal themselves inside a hidden vault, hoping to wait out the Zorgax onslaught. Zara's heart raced as she uncovered the location of the vault. She navigated the bunker's twisting passages, following the flickering guidance of her handheld scanner. At last, she stood before a massive blast door, its surface scarred by plasma burns. With trembling hands, Zara interfaced with the door's control panel. The system was still active, protected by layers of encryption. But Zara was no ordinary soldier. Before joining the military, she had been a skilled hacker, and those talents had only been honed by her training. It took hours of careful work, but finally, the blast door groaned open. Zara stepped into the vault, her rifle at the ready. But instead of danger, she found a treasure trove of advanced human technology. Sleek armored exoskeletons stood in alcoves, their reactive plating glinting in the dim light. Racks of pulse rifles and plasma cannons lined the walls, each weapon a masterpiece of human ingenuity. And in the center of the vault, a towering mech suit loomed, its cockpit open and inviting. Zara approached the mech, marveling at its construction. She clambered inside, the suit's systems humming to life around her. A heads-up display flickered into existence, showing diagnostics and weapon readouts. With a thought, Zara activated the mech's power core. She felt the suit's strength flow through her, enhancing her own abilities to superhuman levels. She took a step, the mech's massive foot crashing down on the vault's floor. In that moment, Zara knew that the tide had turned. With this technology at her disposal, she was more than a match for the Zorgax. She could take the fight to them, disrupt their hunts, and protect other human colonies from their predations. But as she prepared to leave the bunker, a final log entry caught her eye. It was a message from the outpost's lead researcher, a haunting farewell recorded in the last hours of the colony's fall. The researcher spoke of a final desperate plan, a hidden ship, a sleeper vessel, buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Its coordinates were encrypted in the message, a last hope for humanity's survival. Zara's mind raced with the implications. If she could find this ship, if there were surviving humans aboard, it could change everything. She downloaded the encrypted coordinates, determined to unravel their secrets. As she emerged from the bunker in her towering mech suit, Zara knew that her mission had taken on a new dimension. She was no longer just fighting for her own survival, but for the future of her species. And with the power of human technology at her fingertips, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The final confrontation. The Zorgax cruiser hung in orbit like a malevolent spider, its sensor arrays probing the planet's surface for any sign of its lost hunting party. On the bridge, Commander Crack's gore seethed with fury. The human had not only survived, but had decimated some of his best warriors. It was a blow to the Zorgax's pride, a stain on their reputation as the galaxy's apex predators. Crack's gore would not let this insult go unanswered. He ordered the cruiser's full complement of hunters to mobilize, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. On the planet below, Zura was ready. She had spent days studying the capabilities of her new mech suit, mastering its weapons and systems. The bunker had become her fortress, bristling with defenses and traps. When the Zorgex drop ships screamed through the atmosphere, Zura was already moving. She burst from the bunker in a blaze of plasma fire, her mech's cannons roaring. The dropships swerved to evade, but Zara's aim was true. One ship exploded in a ball of flame, raining debris onto the jungle canopy. The remaining ships disgorged their cargo of Zorgax warriors, the hunters leaping from the ramps with predatory grace. They immediately opened fire on Zara's mech, their plasma bolts sizzling against its armored hull. Zara returned fire, her suit's targeting systems locking onto the Zorgax with unerring precision. Pulse rifles chattered and plasma cannons roared as she waded into the fray, the mech's massive fists crushing hunters with every blow. But the Zorgax were many, and they were not so easily defeated. They swarmed around Zora, seeking to overwhelm her with sheer numbers. Plasma bolts scared her mech's armor, and warning alarms blared inside the cockpit. Zura gritted her teeth, activating the suit's point defense systems. Microturrets emerged from the mech's shoulders, spraying the area with a hail of suppressive fire. Zorgax warriors fell, their armor pierced by the relentless barrage. Just as it seemed that Zara might be gaining the upper hand, a new threat emerged. A massive Zorgax warrior, clad in the ornate armor of a high-ranking hunter, leaped into the fray. It was Crackscore himself, come to personally end the human insurgency. The Zorgax commander wielded a huge plasma glaive, its blade crackling with destructive energy. He charged at Zara's mech, roaring a challenge in his guttural language. Zara met his charge head-on, her mech's fists clenched for battle. The two titans clashed in a whirlwind of strikes, plasma blade against hardened metal. Crackscore was fast, his glaive a blur as he rained down blows on Zora's mech. But Zara was fueled by a lifetime of training and a burning desire for vengeance. She countered the Zorgax commander's attacks, parrying his blade with the mech's reinforced forearms. In a daring move, she lashed out with a kick, knocking Crackscore off balance. The opening was all she needed. Zora poured fire into the commander's exposed flank, her plasma cannons tearing through his armor. Crackscore roared in pain and fury, lashing out with a desperate strike. But Zara was faster. She caught the glaive in her mech's grip and wrenched it from the commander's hands. A new legacy. As the broken body of Crackscore fell to the jungle floor, Zara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The battle had been won, but at a great cost. Her mech suit was battered and scarred, its systems pushed to the brink of failure. But there was no time to rest. With the Zorgax commander defeated, the remaining hunters were in disarray. Zara pressed her advantage, harrying them with relentless fire until they fled back to their drop ships in a panic. As the last ship lifted off, Zora allowed herself a moment of respite. She clambered from the mech, her body aching from the strain of combat. But even as she savored her victory, her mind was already racing ahead to the next challenge. The encrypted coordinates from the bunker's final log entry still beckoned to her. Somewhere beneath this planet's surface lay a hidden ship, a potential lifeline for humanity. Zara knew she had to find it. She returned to the bunker, poring over the data with renewed focus. It took days of intense decryption and analysis, but finally she cracked the code. The coordinates led to a series of deep caves not far from the outpost. Zara set out immediately, her mech suit stomping through the undergrowth. She reached the mouth of the caves and plunged inside, her suit's floodlights piercing the gloom. The tunnels twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the planet's crust. And then she saw it. Nestled in a vast underground cavern, a sleek ship rested on landing struts. It was larger than any vessel Zara had ever seen, its hull emblazoned with the insignia of the human resistance. Zara approached cautiously, her mech's sensors scanning for any signs of life. To her shock, the ship's systems were still active, maintained by automated drones, and within its hold, row upon row of cryopods lined the walls. With trembling hands, Zora interfaced with the ship's computer. The pods contained human survivors, placed in suspended animation to await a time when they could rebuild their civilization. And among them, the greatest minds of the resistance, scientists, and soldiers who had dedicated their lives to fighting the Zorgak's threat. Zara knew what she had to do. She activated the ship's revival protocols, watching as the pods hissed open one by one. Groggy figures stumbled out, blinking in the sudden light. They looked to Zara, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. She told them of all that had happened, of the fall of the outpost and her own battle against the Zorgaks. She spoke of the advanced technology she had uncovered, the weapons and defenses that could turn the tide against the predatory aliens. The survivors listened, their resolve hardening with every word. They were the last of the human resistance, the guardians of their species' future. And in Zora, they had found a leader worthy of their cause. In the days that followed, the survivors worked tirelessly to repair and rearm the ship. They studied the Zorgak's technology, reverse engineering and improving upon it. And they trained, honing their skills for the battles to come. Zara oversaw it all, her mech suit a constant presence among the bustling activity. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the Zorgaks would not rest until humanity was wiped from the stars. But she also knew that they would not face this threat alone. As the ship lifted off from the planet's surface, Zara stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. She thought of all the human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy, oblivious to the predatory aliens that stalked them. She thought of the sacrifices that had been made, the lives lost in the name of survival. And she made a vow, a promise to herself, and to all those who had come before. She would not rest until the Zorgaks were defeated, until humanity could live free from the shadow of their predation. She would lead this new resistance, forging a future where humans were the masters of their own destiny. The ship accelerated into the void, its engines burning bright against the darkness. And on the bridge, Zara stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For she was more than just a survivor now. She was a leader, a warrior, a living symbol of humanity's unbreakable spirit. And she would not rest until the galaxy was safe for her people once more.